नमस्ते दीप्ति जी।
नमस्ते अनिल जी। Hello, Sasha.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Deepti.
Hello.
Hello. How is everybody? How are things wherever you are?
We are fine. What about you?
Also fine. Last weeks of the school year, a bit lot of work, but yeah, otherwise fine.
Where are you? Where are you based?
Germany, a small town in southern Germany.
Okay.
And school holidays start the end of July, and yeah, so it's always a bit of like, you know, the final line to the goal, so to say.
Okay. So you understand Hindi?
I'm learning Hindi finally after many years of traveling to India. No, I can't say I understand, but I understand more and more. And I fortunately started early this year with the help of the app called Duolingo. You heard about that? It's actually quite nice because I was always a bit kept away from it by Devanagari. And then there was a time when I realized you need to know Devanagari to properly learn Hindi, but then it's very difficult if you just do it on paper. So then Soumya actually told me about this app, and yeah, it's really helpful. So when it comes to Devanagari, and then yeah, I think in a little while I'll also go to paper. But yeah, so I'm quite happy actually that I finally started.
Very good. Very good.
That's great.
You know this girl, Andrea Gerber?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I think her Hindi is really superb, isn't it?
Her Hindi is better than mine, probably. Dipti, would you want to start? I think we have touched 4 o'clock.
Yeah, right. So formally welcome everyone. Namaste. We are meeting once again on this Sunday, and this Sunday is going to be a little different from rest of the Sundays. आज के संडे में और अगले 2 संडे में सर नहीं है हमारे साथ में, but that doesn't stop from us connecting and listening to the Dhamma and learning together. तो आज का जो सेशन है वो थोड़ा सा अलग होगा, वो हम अभी डिस्कस करेंगे, बट मे बी फर्स्ट वी इन्वोक द बुद्धा धम्मा एंड संघा, द ब्लेसिंग्स ऑफ द ट्रिपल जेम. अनीश जी, आप करेंगे इतिपिसो?
Itipiso bhagavatam samma sambuddho Vidyacharana sampanno sugato lokavido Anuttaro purisa dhamma sarati satta deva manussanam Buddho bhagavati Swakato bhagavata dhammo Sanditiko akaliko ehipassiko panaiko Pachatang veditabbo vinyuhiti Supatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho Ujupatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho Nyayapatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho Ujupatipanno Samicipatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho Yadidang Chattari Purisa Yugani Atta Purisa Puggala Esa Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Ahuneyo Pahuneyo Dakhineyo Anjali Karaneyo Anuttarang Punyaketang Lokasadhi.
So with the blessings of the triple gem and the silent blessings from Sir, we will start. आज का जो सेशन हमने जिस तरीके से सोचा उसके बारे में वो ये है कि अभी रिसेंटली अजान चंद्रसिरी ने इस ग्रुप को एक धम्म देसना दी थी जो कि इस टॉपिक पे थी एस्टैब्लिशिंग वनसेल्फ इन ब्रह्म विहारास। तो हमने सोचा कि क्यों ना उसी टॉक को, उस टॉपिक को उठाया जाए और उस पे थोड़ा सा मनन साथ में किया जाए। तो हम सबसे पहले वही टॉक को प्ले करेंगे। 40 मिनट्स की टॉक है। हम में से बहुत से लोग उसमें उस दिन प्रेजेंट भी थे, तो ये एक रिवीजन जैसा हो जाएगा। जो नहीं थे, नहीं सुन पाए थे, इट्स क्वाइट अ गुड टॉक, तो वो हमें सुनने का मौका मिलेगा। और जब वो टॉक कंप्लीट हो जाएगी उसके बाद हम आपस में ही इसी छोटे से ग्रुप में कुछ डिस्कशंस करेंगे। तो जब आप ये टॉक सुन रहे हैं, आप कुछ पॉइंट्स अपने लिए उस समय मेंटली नोट करना चाहें, जैसे कि आपने इस टॉक से क्या सीखा, कोई एक बात जो सबसे ज्यादा आपको रेजोनेट करी हो, हिट करी हो, व्हाट इज योर की टेक अवे। अनदर थॉट कुड बी कि मैं कैसे किसी एक चीज को अपनी लाइफ में अप्लाई करूं, या कोई पहले का एग्जाम्पल कि मैंने ये जो ब्रह्म विहारों की यहाँ पे बात हो रही है, जिस तरीके से अजान चंद्रसिरी के बारे में बात कर रही है, उसको मैंने पास्ट में किसी तरह अप्लाई किया है या फ्यूचर में अप्लाई कर सकता हूँ, वगैरह वगैरह। इस प्रकार के विचार यदि थोड़ा सा हम रिफ्लेक्शन बेस्ड अपनी लिसनिंग को रखेंगे, तो वो फिर हम बाद में जब इंटरेक्शन करेंगे तो इन्हीं बातों को हम एक दूसरे से सुन लेंगे। और साथ में अनीश जी और राजेश जी जो हैं, वो अगर कुछ ऐसे पॉइंट्स होंगे जो हमें लगेगा कि थोड़ा और एक्सप्लेनेशन शायद मिले, तो वो लोग, उन्होंने कहा है कि ये लोग हमारी हेल्प करेंगे उन बातों को क्लैरिफाई करने में। तो इसके साथ अब मैं वो टॉक को प्ले करती हूँ। राजेश, आप मुझे कंफर्म करना कि सुनाई दे रहा है कि नहीं। देना तो चाहिए वैसे।
Tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So, hello everybody. I felt very honored, very privileged to be invited to speak to you all today. And was very glad when I received notification of the topic, establishing oneself in the Brahma Viharas. This is something that I consider a lot, because it feels to me that particularly during this time of the world pandemic, where so many people are very, very seriously challenged in their living situations, that these qualities, metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha, are all very, very relevant, very significant for us in our lives. They obviously benefit us just experiencing these qualities in the heart is a very lovely, very lovely thing. It's very lovely to experience these qualities of the heart. And also the effect on those around us can be quite tangible. One of the things about them is that it gives a kind of a strength, a kind of an independence. Because when life is confusing and difficult and frightening and just generally upsetting, being able to establish oneself in kindness, compassion, joyfulness and serenity really provides a very firm anchor from which to respond to the difficulties of both in our own life and for those around us. I've always been rather interested in these qualities because when I was first taught about them, they seemed like very wonderful aspirations. And with the first retreat I did with Ajahn Sumedho, and he gave guided meditations in the cultivation of metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha. But what I found was that it didn't really seem to work so well for me in everyday life. You know, I could be kind and I could be compassionate in situations that weren't threatening or challenging to me in any way. It was easy to be kind to people and situations that I liked, and to be kind to, you know, small, you know, attractive animals. Like we have cats here at Amaravati. It's very easy to be kind to the cats, cuddle the cats, and but then there are certain situations, certain people where, for some reason, I would find that this kindness wouldn't come forth in quite the same way. It wasn't a natural thing to feel kindness, say to somebody who was irritating me or somebody who was challenging me in some way. There'd be a feeling of fear or a feeling of anger. And I would try to say, you know, may you be well, may you be happy. But somehow or other, it didn't really go very deep. It was rather artificial, rather superficial. So I began to contemplate this and came to an understanding that actually we really need to start here. We really need to start with learning how to show kindness, how to show compassion towards ourselves. So what does this mean? It means actually being rather honest with ourselves, rather curious about our own minds, about our attitudes, looking a little bit more deeply, rather than feeling that I should be kind to everybody, actually looking and seeing, coming to an appreciation of why that's difficult. What became clear to me was that it's difficult because I hadn't really learned how to be kind towards myself. And that meant much more than being kind towards the aspects of myself that I liked, appreciating the aspects of myself that were kind of worthy, noble. You know, it's easy to be glad and to feel a sense of acceptance and appreciation for one's, I don't know, generosity or patience, these kind of things. But much more difficult to feel appreciation or acceptance of grumpiness, irritability, anxiety, lack of confidence. You know, all of these less inspiring qualities that are there for each one of us. So it's interesting that the Buddha's teachings, the Four Noble Truths, it always starts off with suffering. First Noble Truth, there is suffering, there is struggle. And I was fortunate in that my teacher Ajahn Sumedho and his teacher also, Ajahn Chah, they placed great emphasis on the Four Noble Truths as the basic teaching, the intermediate teaching, and the advanced teaching, to be able to really take an interest in suffering. Because as you all know, suffering is part of our life, and in order to liberate the heart from suffering, it needs to be understood. So this meant noticing when there was an inner struggle, when something was happening within our own minds, our own hearts, our own bodies even, that we didn't like, that we thought shouldn't be there, that we were embarrassed or ashamed about. Just noticing that struggle, that feeling that things should be different. This is what we call dukkha, wanting things to be other than the way that they are. So just recognizing that inner friction, that inner struggle, the inability to be at ease with the particular perception we have of ourselves at that moment. You know, shy, unsure, hesitant, confused, hopeless, inadequate, these feelings. Can we recognize those? Can we establish presence with those? Can we accept those just the way they are? This is part of human existence. Part of being a human being is that we experience these things. Human beings don't just experience nice things, don't just experience noble, wonderful things, but if we really want to learn about being a human being, we need to open our heart to the whole of it. So metta, kindness towards this being here. Can I open to this being here? Can I accept this being here? With all its wonderfulness, its beautiful qualities, and also with its less beautiful qualities, its difficulties, its challenges, its confusions, its fears. Can I accept that? Can I honor that as part of being a human being? What I found as a result of doing that, what I found was a much greater capacity to accept and appreciate other people with their difficulties. I had noticed that the things that I didn't like about other people, the people that I didn't like, tended to be the ones who were manifesting qualities that I hadn't accepted in myself. So as I accepted these feelings of anxiety, fear, and so on, I gradually began to be able to have a sense of tenderness, a sense of well-wishing towards others who were manifesting those qualities. I was much less harsh in my judgments, much less exacting or demanding in terms of how I felt that they should be, much more ready to accept them as they were. So metta is sometimes translated as loving kindness, and that's the most usual translation of metta. But I like to think of it more just as acceptance, a giving a space for, accommodating, with a heart of friendliness, a willingness, an openness. It doesn't mean that we approve, if somebody's behaving very foolishly, doing things that are harmful. It's not that I have metta for their harmful speech or action. Certainly not. We don't condone the foolishness, but we condone, we have kindness for the human being who's manifesting those things. We have kindness, we also have compassion. Because again, as we investigate our own suffering, our own struggles, we come to appreciate just how painful it is if we do something that is unkind, something that is harmful towards somebody else or towards an animal even. There's always a price to pay. We don't get away with anything in this life. There's a result. So when we see people behaving in atrocious ways, we might maybe feel angry or upset or indignant, but just a moment's reflection can bring forth a sense of compassion. They don't really know what they're doing. They don't really know the harm that they're causing, either to somebody else, to the other people, to the situation, to the planet even, or to themselves. I've always been interested listening to His Holiness the Dalai Lama speaking about what happened to, or what's happening to his country, and the terrible atrocities that were committed towards his people. And it's happening also in other parts of the world. And I've always been interested in his response, which is basically a sense of concern for the people who are doing these terrible things, because there'll be a price. I've noticed in my own life, if I do something foolish or harmful towards somebody else, then when I come to sit in meditation, my mind is disturbed. There's a sense of regret or remorse, which is actually a wholesome quality. It's good to feel that, but it's not a pleasant state. It's not, we don't like it, but it's the natural consequence of having hurt somebody, having harmed somebody, having acted impulsively or foolishly. So karuna is compassion, compassion for the suffering of others, compassion also for our own suffering, our own struggle. And interestingly, again, what I've noticed is that I really need to begin here. As a nun, I'm quite frequently called upon to offer guidance or support to people who are struggling in different ways. You know, people come and ask my advice about certain situations that they're facing in their lives. And one of the situations I used to find most challenging was if I was invited to go and accompany somebody who was towards the point of death, or in the middle of some very, very serious illness or difficulty. Because I think there was always a concern that I was going to say the wrong thing. I was going to make a mistake. I was going to make things worse in some way. You know, I'd been a nun for a number of years, and I thought, well, I'm a nun. You know, they're expecting me to say something wise, something that's going to be helpful and encouraging. And I'm afraid that maybe I'm going to mess up. I'm going to do something, say something that's not going to be helpful. And so I'd go into the situation. I remember with one lady I went to see, and I think I was the last person to visit her. And she died shortly after I had visited her. And she, I can't remember what exactly her question was, but she looked at me very, very intently. It was a very strong look, really wanted me to you know, really was interested in what I would have to say. I think I'd said something about dying beautifully. And she said, well, what do you mean? And I came out with the answer, well, mindfully. And this wasn't an answer that was coming from a peaceful, settled place. It's an answer coming from a wanting to say the right thing. So it was one of those situations, and those of you who are familiar with Ajahn Chah's teaching will probably have heard it said, right but not true, true but not right. It was like that. It was the right answer, but it wasn't coming from the right place. And this lady, she was very outspoken, throughout her life. She could say the most shocking things, and she came out with the most foul swear words. And I thought, yeah, Chantasiri, that's what you deserve. It was like a real ticking off when I had come out with this trite answer, which in one way was completely the right answer, but it was coming from a place of anxiety, of wanting to get it right. If I had been present, if I had been mindful, I probably would have responded very differently. So how could I have shown compassion towards myself in that situation or in similar situations? How do we bring compassion into a situation where somebody is at the point of death or in the middle of a very serious illness, or maybe, recently bereaved? I mean, many of you, I imagine, have been in situations over these last weeks and months with people who are dying, people who are bereaved, maybe bereaved in very unfortunate circumstances, maybe not able to be with their loved ones who were dying, very tragic situations. So how do we bring forth a real sense of compassion in that situation? It's obviously a situation where compassion is needed and can be helpful. But what does it look like in practice? Is it me going into the situation as the wise, compassionate friend, going to say the right thing to make things all right for that person? Or is it me going in with a heart of compassion for the whole situation, including my part in it? Am I able to really enter into the whole situation fully and completely, to give myself to it, to acknowledge my own sense of uncertainty, anxiety, to be able to be patiently with that, fully present with what's happening here and now, perhaps not having any idea what I'm going to say, no little storehouse of sort of catalogue of wise answers, what you say for this situation or this situation. That all goes out of the window when we're really present. There's no particular idea or thought in the mind other than this sense of a compassionate willingness to bear with the pain of the situation, the pain of the person in their struggle, my own pain in wanting to do the right thing, to help, to support. And can I be fully with all of it? And what I've found is that when I can do that, rather than having an answer up here, an answer comes forth. Or it may be a comment, or it may just be silence, or it may be some kind of an action, doing something, or just sitting quietly. In my own life, sometimes when I've been very ill, I've had a couple of very serious illnesses in my life, and it's been very interesting to be on the receiving end of different responses from people who come to visit. Some people trying hard to say the right thing and saying exactly the wrong thing. Other people kind of really awkward, obviously wanting to help, to be kind. And of course, there's an appreciation of all of that. And then just noticing how there are other people who just come and they're just quietly there. And you see that sometimes that's the most supportive thing. So rather than feeling that I have to do something compassionate or I have to say something compassionate, sometimes that's appropriate and sometimes that's what comes forth and that's fine. Sometimes just being there, just quietly there, being willing to be fully with the situation rather than trying to make it all right and get away as quickly as possible. So karuna, has a depth to it and a subtlety to it. It requires a giving up of the sense of self. Me going to do the compassionate thing for you, me going to help you, me going to make everything all right for you. It becomes us. There's no longer me and you, there's just us. As fellow human beings. Not even thinking of it like that, there's just presence. Mudita is the third in the list of the Brahma Viharas. And this is one that has been most interesting for me. Mudita, translated as altruistic joy, appreciative joy, sympathetic joy. And often the further description is like gladness at the good fortune of others. And I was always very challenged by this, because sometimes I could feel glad at the good fortune of others. But if somebody else had something that I really wanted or thought I didn't have, what tended to happen instead was jealousy, envy, a really unpleasant mind state. In fact, it was that actually brought me into this spiritual practice right in the beginning, because I was so troubled by my lack of ability to celebrate somebody's good fortune. So jealousy is a very unpleasant condition. And what I found in my own practice was that not only was there jealousy, but there was also the aversion to the jealousy, the hating the jealousy and hating myself. So it all got very complicated, very unpleasant, very difficult. And absolutely no sense of gladness at the good fortune of somebody else. So it's only relatively recently that I've really figured out what the problem was, where I was going wrong with this. There's a chant that we do, and it's actually a passage from the scriptures, and it's repeated very frequently in many of the suttas, where it says, the disciple abides, pervading 1/4 with a mind of, say, gladness, take mudita. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth, so above and below, around and everywhere. And to all as to myself. Now, I hadn't really sort of understood that. I knew about having kindness towards myself. I knew about having compassion towards myself. But I hadn't properly appreciated the importance of being able to celebrate the blessings and the goodness and the joy of my own life. I hadn't really appreciated the fact that I could feel mudita, I could feel gladness towards my own life, my own being, my own existence. I was imagining or feeling that I had to feel it, towards this other person or this situation, to celebrate the beauty of the situation and just be glad about everybody having a good time or whatever it was. But what I was experiencing was they were having a good time, and this being here there was a kind of emptiness, a kind of bleakness, and a real hatred and negativity towards everybody and towards this. So when I actually thought about this, mudita, towards myself, to all as to myself, as to myself, whereas actually it has to start off here. So I found it really works. So if there's a situation where I feel, I still occasionally feel a little twinge of jealousy arising sometimes. So if I notice that arising, rather than worrying about it or feeling that I shouldn't have it or getting complicated about it, I just say, okay, Chandasiri, what about you? You have this, this, and this, and I would enumerate the good fortune, the blessings of my life. There's always something to celebrate, always something. May not be very much, but there's always something to celebrate, to feel glad about, something that one has done well, or even just the very fact that we've come across this path, this way of practice, this way to lead us out from suffering. That can bring joy. So making much of our own good fortune, much of our successes. Now, for many of us, I mean, particularly in the culture where I grew up, we weren't really encouraged to think very much about the things that we did well, the good things about ourselves. We were more encouraged to think about our faults, our difficulties, you know, our shortcomings. That was what we were encouraged to make much of. So it took a little while to kind of get the hang of it. And I think, you know, in fact, I know that my mother was very worried that I might get conceited, I might get big-headed, you know, if I thought too much about, you know, my own good qualities. You know, so I never really learned how to do that. What I found, strangely enough, is that that doesn't seem to happen. What arises is a sense of gladness, a sense of mudita, you know, a sense of celebration. You know, this life has been good. You know, there are good things that have happened as a result of this life that I've lived. You know, okay, I've made lots of mistakes, but there are good things. So to learn how to celebrate that, to bring a sense of blessing into the heart. I remember one time at Chithurst, and I might have told you this story before. I was on retreat, and one of the things that happens when I go on self-retreat is that I often end up totally miserable because, you know, I don't have very good concentration. You know, meditation is, you know, plenty of room for improvement, and so rather than being able to celebrate any successes, I would get very caught up in the things that weren't good enough. And I remember one time just waiting, I think I was waiting for the meal or something, and just feeling pretty glum. And then thinking about the Buddha, the Blessed One. And I thought, oh, Chandasiri, you're not very blessed, are you? You're not very filled with blessings. There's no sense of blessing in your heart. And realizing that I don't have to wait for other people to fill my heart with blessings, but I can fill my heart with blessings. So really learning how to do that. And the more we can do that, the consequence is a real sense of appreciation and joy for the good things, the beautiful things that we see around us. You know, when there's an ordination ceremony, for example, you just feel really glad, really happy for somebody going forth. Or the other day, I rescued a small creature. I was having, it was our quiet day, I'd gone for a walk and I had a picnic, and a little flying something, I'm not sure what it was, landed up in my soup. And I thought, oh dear. And I kind of fished it out and I put it on a tissue and it recovered. And I just felt so happy. And then it flew away. Just a real sense of gladness that this little creature had survived. So it can be about very small things, but it can also be about much bigger things. Sometimes in festivals, in ceremonies, I used to feel very grumpy because, you know, everyone else was having a good time and I wasn't feeling very interested, didn't want to do what they were doing. Rather than being able to enter into it with a full heart. So mudita is about filling up one's own heart, filling it up so it's overflowing and there's just a natural sense of joy and delight at the goodness and beauty around us, being able to see it, you know, celebrating the beauty that you see, you know, people's acts of kindness. I mean, that's one of the things about the pandemic and the terrible things about it, but also it's brought forth enormous acts of kindness and heroism. You know, these things that you hear about, the heart just feels glad. That's mudita. Equanimity or serenity, upekkha, is a very special quality. It's sometimes translated as indifference, which to me in English means a kind of almost like not caring. And I think there are some people who are attracted to the Buddhist teachings because they like the idea of not having to care, a kind of dispassion, standing back from life. But I have a feeling that actually upekkha is a much fuller, much more engaged quality than simply indifference. As far as I can understand it, it requires a maturity of the heart that recognizes that life in life we can experience a whole range of different things, and that the human realm, within the human realm, there's the capacity to experience the most extraordinary bliss and happiness and joy, extraordinary beauty, much to celebrate, much to just really delight in, and also the most extremely horrific, dreadful conditions, a whole range. And for me, it seems that upekkha is about actually being able to stay present, whatever the condition might be, just to stay fully present. There's a wonderful verse in the Mahamangala Sutta that I'm always quoting, Puttasaloka Dhammehi Chittanyasana Kampati. So though living in the world, though touched by the world, yet the heart does not tremble. We have some wonderful trees here, poplar trees, and the leaves shake like this, Kampati. And for the heart to not tremble, the heart to stay steady, to stay still, to stay present, when the conditions are absolutely wonderful, absolutely beautiful, and equally when the conditions are absolutely appalling. As I said, this requires a kind of maturity of the heart. And my sense is that sometimes we need to recognize our limitations. You know, in my own practice, there are certain situations that if I can avoid them, then I will, because I have a sense that the heart can't bear it. You know, it's not strong enough. There's not enough of a stability with whatever the situation might be. If I absolutely don't have a choice, then I engage with it. But there's one situation, I think it was after the tsunami some years ago at Christmas time, and hearing stories of volunteers going in Thailand, I think it was, going to kind of help just with just clearing up and the bodies, and just having to manage quite extreme, quite awful situations, and being able to keep it together while they were there, but then having complete collapse afterwards, just almost as though they put themselves into something that their heart wasn't ready for, they weren't able to bear. So knowing one's capacity can be a skillful response to these things. So it's a tricky one. Perhaps it's more about knowing one's capacity, knowing when one needs to take a break. Like I always encourage people who are looking after someone who's sick, dying, make sure you have some time on your own each day. You don't feel you have to stay in that situation 24 hours, non-stop. Try to make sure that you have a time on your own. And even if you can't get out into nature, just at least be with yourself, come to the breath as an act of kindness towards the whole situation, looking after yourself. Don't expect more of yourself than you actually have the capacity for. So it's kind of a balancing. And maybe with any kind of balancing, we have to fall over into one extreme or the other before and topple over before we come back into the middle, finding the middle way. So these 4 Brahma Viharas are very, very extraordinary, beautiful qualities. They're divine qualities, they're qualities of the Brahma realm. And I was reading a sutta this morning about how if you develop these qualities, then you'll be good chance that you'll be reborn in the Brahma realm. But if you would like to even surpass that and enter into Nibbana, then develop the Brahma Viharas, but see them as part of the flow of life, changing conditions, anicca, dukkha, anatta. So to be developed, to be cultivated, give it all you've got, but see beyond it. Cultivating the middle way, the way of letting go. So we can create, we can transform ourselves into a conduit for these beautiful qualities, but see them all as being changing, unsatisfactory ultimately, and not who and what we are. But qualities that the world very, very badly needs right now. Held with a sense of inner balance, inner steadiness. Just as what we can do in our lives for the welfare of ourselves and the welfare of everybody else. So I'm aware that there's so many other things I could have said, but I'm also aware that the idea was that I would talk a bit and then offer a chance for people to ask questions. And so perhaps it's time to end my formal talk and to see what questions you might have, what you'd like me to say a little bit more about.
So well, that brings us in towards the end of this talk, and now it's the time for questions. लेकिन एक अलग तरीके से जो लोग थोड़ा बाद में ज्वाइन हुए थे उनके लिए बता दें कि आज जिस तरीके से हम ये सेशन कर रहे हैं, हमने अजान चंद्रसिरी की अभी एक टॉक सुनी ब्रह्म विहारों के बारे में, और अब हम आपस में ये इंटरेक्शन करेंगे, डिस्कशन करेंगे कि इस टॉक के बेसिस पे कुछ इंटरेक्शन करेंगे। तो एक सवाल तो यही है, आप में से कुछ अगर इसका उत्तर देना चाहें कि आपके लिए इस टॉक में से कोई एक बात जो बहुत स्टैंड आउट करी हो, वो अगर आप शेयर करना चाहें। Maybe can I invite Nikhil ji? Nikhil ji, would you like to take a stab at this one?
हाँ, 1 मिनट मुझे दीजिए बस। नमस्ते एवरीवन। मुझे आप आवाज सुन पा रहे हैं? हाँ। मुझे उस टॉक में लास्ट में अनीश जी ने जो क्वेश्चन पूछा था, दैट मेक्स वेरी नाइस सेंस। इसमें आपने पूछा कि हम सेल्फलेसनेस की बात करते हैं और हम सेल्फ को हम इस समय बात कर रहे हैं कि सेल्फ के बारे में मिलता है। So that was a very nice question, and that made me, research further. I listened to her answer, and that made me research further. And actually, हम सुबह बुक पढ़ते हैं हमारे मेडिटेशन में, तो उसमें अय्या खेमा ने भी इसको उन्हीं की बात को एक्सटेंड करते हुए बड़ा अच्छा आंसर दिया था, तो वो मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगा। मैं एक्चुअली उसको पहले पढ़ता था, मुझे समझ नहीं आता था वो पर्टिकुलर पैराग्राफ, अब उस क्वेश्चन से रिलेट करके पढ़ता हूँ और वो आंसर भी मिलता है, और मेरे लिए काफी दैट वाज द टेक अवे फ्रॉम मी फॉर मी।
थैंक्स। तो क्योंकि अभी तो आज हमने वो Q&A नहीं चलाया, तो क्या आप कुछ शेयर कर पाएंगे कि अजान ने क्या उत्तर में क्या कहा था, आप या अनीश जी? आप भी कर लीजिए।
हाँ, मतलब if I remember, the point was that Anish ji asked that, I mean, once we talk about selflessness, then why we are sending the energies of metta, compassion to ourselves? Then there is something self. So to answer that, Ajan said, there is someone here. He said something like that. There is someone here. So the extension is that, yeah, of course, someone is here, and that self is right now weak, and we need to heal that with that energy. And probably with after healing with that energy, with a healthy self, we can dissolve that self. And sir also used to say like that only. There is someone, we need to first of all heal it up, and then we need to, and that was the written in that particular book also. Sometime, I mean, I can share that also, that particular, I have that particular portion. So I was not able to reconnect it with this, but then with the help of question, now I can say, okay, that was written in that book. Or if you can kindly allow me that sharing option, I'll just, because I'm going through that.
Is it up on your screen already?
No, you have to allow me.
So while you pull it up, maybe तब तक हम अनीश जी से सुन लेते हैं, अब क्योंकि हम शायद ये थोड़ा सा एक अलग डायरेक्शन में चले गए, बट लेट्स हियर फ्रॉम अनीश जी। तो अनीश जी, सवाल ये है कि अगर हमारी सारी साधना अनंतता के लिए है, और यहाँ पे हम बात कर रहे हैं कि अपने आप को ही मैत्री, अपने आप को ही करुणा, अपने आप के प्रति मुदिता, तो ये जो विरोधाभास, कैसे विरोधाभास समझा जाए, या ये हमारी साधना में कैसे फिट होता है?
यहाँ पे एक कॉन्फ्लिक्ट था। इट वाज अ काइंड ऑफ अ कॉन्फ्लिक्ट जो मैं यहाँ पे मुझे आना पड़ेगा कि जो मैं इतने सालों से साधना कर रहा था, सबसे पहले इतना भाव हमने अनंतता के ऊपर दिया नहीं था पहले, और ज्यादा करके दुख और अनिच्छा के ऊपर ही ज्यादा महत्व दिया गया है मेरी साधना में। और हमेशा जब ये मैत्री होती थी तो सबका मंगल होता था, कि औरों का मंगल हम चाहते थे। तो जब फॉरेस्ट ट्रेडिशन से जुड़े तो यहाँ पे एक तो बहुत बड़ा प्रभाव अनंतता के ऊपर दिया जाता था कि हाँ, दुख अनिच्छा है, लेकिन एक अनंतता भी चीज है जिसके ऊपर ध्यान देना है। तो यहाँ पे क्या प्रज्ञा का भाव यहाँ पे जागता है। और फिर साथ में ही अहम अवेरो होमी, अहम अनिगो होमी, तो मतलब कि रोज सुबह शाम की जो साधना के अंदर मैत्री पहले अपने आप को दो, फिर माता पिता आचार्य, तो पहले अपने आप को मैत्री दो। तो यहाँ पे एक कॉन्फ्लिक्ट है, अनंतता भी कह रहे हो और अपने आप को भी मैत्री दे रहे हो, तो एक अत्ता का भाव भी बना जा रहा है उसमें। तो ये मेरा सवाल था अजान से, और उनका जो उत्तर था, हाँ जो तुम कह रहे हो बिल्कुल ठीक है थियोरेटिकली, कि अनंता भाव की तरफ जाना है, लेकिन फैक्ट तो ये है कि अत्ता भाव है ना, और अत्ता भाव के अंदर नेगेटिव क्वालिटीज हैं, तो वो नेगेटिव क्वालिटीज के अंदर भी पॉजिटिव क्वालिटीज देनी है, जो है मैत्री और करुणा और मुदिता और उपेक्षा। तो एक ये जो जीना सा जो पर्दा, ये जो कॉन्फ्लिक्ट का मेरे दिमाग में था, और ये खुला इस टॉक से और अजान के उत्तर से। और मैं देख रहा हूँ 1 हफ्ता हुआ साधना के बाद मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगने लगा, क्योंकि आई मीन इट वाज अ डिफरेंट पर्सपेक्टिव, क्योंकि एक इल्यूजनरी वर्ल्ड में हम थे कि पहले तो कि मैं दूसरों को मैत्री दे रहा हूँ अपने को जाने बगैर, कि और एक ये इल्यूजन में है कि हाँ भाई सबका मंगल, और सबका मन के अंदर कुछ और भाव चल रहा है, सबका मंगल गाए जा रहे हैं हम, लेकिन ये नहीं पता चल रहा है कि यार क्या हो क्या रहा है। लेकिन यहाँ पे अंदर से am I really happy? Am I really peaceful? And the moment I started working what Ajahn said, to just have a little bit of metta and compassion and even mudita कि मैंने ये किया, ये अच्छा कार्य किया है, तो मैं उसको अगर याद करता हूँ, हाँ, पुण्यानुसति कहा जाता है, पुण्यानुसति से मन को शांत करने का एक ये डिवाइस है, लेकिन ज्यादा एम्फोसिस नहीं दिया गया है उसके ऊपर। लेकिन अगर आप मुदिता के भाव से अपने पुण्यानुसति करते हैं तो एक अहम नहीं जगा रहे हैं, एक it's a very nice state of mind, and it really helped me a lot in this 1 week I've been practicing after she answered me.
Sure, thank you. So Nikhil ji, you would like to share your screen now? Mute पे हैं आप.
But I'm not getting that option.
Actually option तो enabled है.
Okay, so might be some problem. But that was the question of Aniji. That was my takeaway. I really liked the question. That helped me to attach that question with the reading. I was reading that particular book during morning sessions, and that said, Aniji, that book said that I mean, we are, of course, we are affirming something about ourselves, but this is the journey towards the egolessness. They said that anyway we are journeying, and we are journeying with ego, but this journey is in the right direction. So this will eventually leading to egolessness. We are healing ourselves, and that was wonderful question. So that was my takeaway from that session. Yeah, thank you so much for asking that question.
All right, thank you.
It required a lot of courage to ask the question, but
Yeah.
I did ask it.
Yeah, so anyone else would like to share their some key takeaway from today's talk, from this talk? ये तो एक closed group है. I will start calling out names. मुझे उसके लिए courage नहीं चाहिए. रवि जी.
हाँ नमस्ते.
हाँ नमस्ते. आप कुछ बताएंगे कि वो टॉक के में आपके लिए कोई बात स्टैंड आउट करी हो तो?
एक्चुअली जो उपेक्षा के बारे में उन्होंने कि जिस तरह की पर्सपेक्टिव जो थी दैट वाज एक्चुअली क्वाइट न्यू टू मी. नॉर्मली तो उपेक्षा हम जिस तरह से विपश्यना का कोर्सेस में करते आ रहे हैं कि एक्चुअली to be having a detached view of whatever is happening in the body-mind complex. So actually she was able to give the association of with kindness अपने आप को treat करना, or when one is in a very stressful kind of situation, like for example taking care of sick people, or she gave the example of the tsunami victims, people going there. There is a capacity to which one can actually bear, and उसके आगे अगर जाने का अगर sensation से sense कर रहे हैं, तो one needs to give oneself a break and be in the middle path. और वो middle path के बारे में हंसते हुए ये भी कह रही थी कि जब भी middle path खोजते हैं तो हम दूसरी तरफ गिर जाते हैं, फिर वापस आते हैं. So the perspective about coming to the middle path in Upekha by actually distancing oneself from the intense situations is a thing that she was talking about. वो मुझे बहुत अलग नजरिया से लोग देखने का वो मिला था. I was actually able to think of it like मैंने इस तरह से कभी नहीं सोचा उपेक्षा के बारे में. तो ये मुझे
Yeah, very true. Thanks for that. शिवानी, आप कुछ कहना चाहते हो?
Yeah, I think what I really struck me in that talk was when she says that when she was tending to that lady who was sick. I think that really stood out for me because always the whole point that we are saying things, we want to say things which are right and which are wise, and but so that doesn't always work. So I think that stood out for me.
Yeah, and that was also such a humble thing to do. मतलब जब ये realization हो जाता है, just to, it's a realization of the way things are, that currently मेरी इतनी capacity है और उसके beyond जाके मैं कुछ intellectual level पे कह रही हूँ, which is not connecting with the moment, then that's not coming from a place of Dhamma. Rajesh, would you like to add something about any of what you have heard so far? And then after that, Poonam ji will invite you.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to add to what Raviji said. And that has been a dilemma for me personally also. And actually had several conversations, not just one, several conversations with Tharsar on these two Brahma Viharas and how do they come together, which is compassion and upekha, right? So in one Brahma Vihara, you need to feel, what the compassion and the struggle that somebody is going through, and you need to have that empathy and have that, you need to be full of that feeling, right? And on the other hand, the upekha is all about, remaining equanimous, not being affected by either the, the positives or the negatives. And so this has always been this, they always were seen to be in a tussle with each other. If, for example, I have been many a times in several parts, of my life, move too much towards upekha, after doing maybe, a camp, or, I would kind of be numb towards anything happening around me and feel that I am in upekha, that this doesn't matter to me, that doesn't matter to me. And then suddenly when I look inside, it feel very dry, because obviously I kind of pushed all my emotions down, right? But I think what Ajahn said was very beautiful. I think it was the example of tsunami was a beautiful example, where the volunteers, did their best out of compassion, right? Because they exuberated their compassion a lot by going and helping others. But when they reached their limit, they kind of stepped back and had the sense of upekha, that this is it, this, I can't handle more than that, and not feel the guilt out of that. Because if you're feeling a surge of compassion, you will also have a guilt that I'm not able to help the rest of the people that I could not. But that upekha was very beautifully balanced with the compassion, right? So you do your best with compassion, and after that you take a step back and don't feel the guilt, but kind of abide in upekha. So I think she kind of answered the dilemma that I was going through very beautifully, and it was a big takeaway for me.
Yeah, thanks. And I think उन्होंने उसे बड़े अच्छे शब्दों में भी कहा कि upekha is a maturity of the heart.
Yeah.
So it's not, the way we used to, many a times, it's easy to try and impose upekha upon oneself by becoming indifferent, and hence the illness that you're talking about, shutting down the emotions and assuming that, this bravo, the machoism that I have in this situation is upekha, but maybe that's not what it is. It also takes me to the thought जो सर से मैंने कई बार सुना है, हमने पहले ब्रह्म विहार पे एक पैनल डिस्कशन भी की थी, तो वहां पे ये बात आई थी कि मैत्री जो है वो बाकी तीनों ब्रह्म विहारों का बेस है। और जब हम उस बात को समझते हैं तो पता चलता है कि उपेक्षा इज आल्सो नॉट फ्री ऑफ feeling as in not emotion, but that understanding towards others, and the wish for not harm of others, and the wish for goodwill of everybody. So it has upekha also has a heart quality to it. पंकज, आप कुछ कहना चाहते हैं यहाँ पे?
हाँ, नमस्कार सभी को। अभी जो पहला क्वेश्चन था, जैसे कि हम अनात्म की ओर जाना चाहते हैं, पर आत्म खुद के बारे में मैत्री देना है, वो तो आत्म बिल्डअप करेगा। तो उसके लिए जहां तक मैं अपने विचार प्रस्तुत करना चाह रहा हूँ कि मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि जितनी भी आध्यात्मिक जो साधना होती है, उसका एकमात्र लक्ष्य क्या होता है कि हमें जो हमारा माइंड है, जो इम्प्योर माइंड है, उसको प्योर बनाना है। और फिर उस प्योर माइंड का मतलब टूल की तरह यूज करके हम रियलिटी को एज इट इज देख पाए। क्योंकि जब हमारा इम्प्योर माइंड होता है तो रियलिटी नहीं देख पाते। तो यही सारी साधना चल रही होती है। तो अब इसमें जो हमें विरोधाभास लगता है कि अनात्म की ओर जाना है लेकिन आत्म को क्यों जोड़ रहे हैं, क्योंकि ये जो जितने भी टूल्स हैं, ये शरीर और मन, क्योंकि इसी का इस्तेमाल करना है हमें, और इसी का इस्तेमाल करते हुए हमें इन पूरी सच्चाई को जानना है। तो इसमें क्या होता है कि अगर जैसे हम अपने आप को देते हैं, मैत्री देते हैं, तो हम जैसे अनुभव से देखेंगे कि अगर जब मैत्री दे रहे होते हैं तो हमारा मन शांत होता है, चित्त शांत होता है, और फिर उससे हम काफी तरीके से सच्चाई को थोड़ा थोड़ा सा जानने लगते हैं। तो जब सच्चाई को जानते हैं तब हल्का सा समझ में आता है कि नहीं, ये तो हम अटैच हो रहे थे। जैसे एक अनुभव से मैंने देखा था कि जब मैं चीजों के साथ अटैच होना शुरू हो जाता हूँ विचार में कि ये मेरा है, मैं है, काफी देर तक मैं जब बैठ के ध्यान में ये देखता हूँ कि इससे अटैच होने की कोशिश करता हूँ प्रैक्टिकली, तो जैसे ही प्रैक्टिकली उससे अटैच होने की कोशिश करता हूँ एकदम से वो दुख उत्पन्न करने लगता है। जो पटिच्च समुत्पाद में जो कॉज एंड इफेक्ट की तरीके से बात करते हैं, तो वो क्या होता है कि दुख उत्पन्न करने लगता है। फिर जैसे ही मन को हटा के उस चीज से मतलब उससे हटा देते हैं, तो फिर हम देखते हैं कि वो धीरे 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 वो शांत होना शुरू हो जाता है। तो अटैचमेंट की जो बात कर रहे हैं कि अटैचमेंट ही दुख का कारण है, वो मुझे जहां तक लगता है कि यही कारण है कि किसी भी चीज से आप अटैच होके देखिए एक बार, वो आपको दुख पैदा करना शुरू कर देगा। और नॉन अटैच जैसे ही होंगे किसी भी सिचुएशन से, तो आपको दुख पैदा नहीं करेगा, आप आराम से देख पाओगे। तो ये जो पटिच्च समुप्पाद जो था, जितना भी हम प्रैक्टिस कर रहे हैं, वो किस लिए कर रहे हैं? अगर यहाँ पे कोई प्रैक्टिस करने वाला है ही नहीं, तो प्रैक्टिस आखिर कर क्यों रहे हैं? क्योंकि कहीं ना कहीं तो हमें, हमारा जो गोल है वो अनात्म की ओर है, पर वो अनात्म तक पहुंचने के लिए इस टूल का इस्तेमाल करना ही होगा जिसको आत्म कह रहे हैं। मुझे ये ऐसा लग रहा है। और दूसरी चीज मैं यहाँ पे जैसे जोड़ना चाहूंगा, जो मेरे को बहुत अच्छा लगा इस टीचिंग में, कि अजान ने एक बात बोली थी कि हम स्वयं के लिए महत्ता नहीं करते। तो मुझे याद है काफी साल पहले मैंने एक टॉक सुना था, तो वहाँ पे स्वामी थे एक, उन्होंने ये बताया था कि दो तरीके के लोग होते हैं जो मॉन्क बनते हैं। एक तो होते हैं कि बिल्कुल ही दूसरों के लिए ही हमें सब कुछ अच्छा करना है, अपने बारे में बिल्कुल भूल जाते हैं और अपने आप को संघर्ष करते हैं, स्ट्रगल कराते हैं, सारे दुखों को झेलते हैं। दूसरे होते हैं जो सिर्फ और सिर्फ स्वयं के लिए चलते हैं कि मुझे ही निर्वाण पाना है या इस तरीके से। तो दोनों ही के लिए लास्ट में जो उन्होंने एक वर्ड यूज किया था जानने की, मिडल वे। तो दोनों ही जो है ना गलत एक्सट्रीम में पहुंच जाते हैं। तो हम कई बार होता है कि दूसरों के लिए ही करते रहते हैं कि सबका भला हो, लेकिन जब खुद देखते हैं तो अंदर खुद बड़े बेचैन से होते हैं, बड़े दुखी से होते हैं। तो ऐसे हम कैसे दूसरे को कर सकते हैं? तो सबसे पहले कॉज क्या है कि हमारा खुद का ही है, जब मन विचलित है तो उसे शांत करें। तो इसमें अगर जो मिडिल वे की जो बात करी थी, ये सबसे मुझे अच्छा लगा कि हमें ये देखना होगा कि पहले समस्या कहाँ पे। अगर हमारा पहले खुद का सेटिस्फेक्शन हो चुका है, सारी चीजें हमारे मतलब मन शांत हो चुका है, तो दूसरों को दे पाएंगे। और फिर ऐसे भी अति मना चले जाएं कि सिर्फ दूसरे ही दूसरे दूसरे, क्योंकि आखिर हमें भी तो मार्ग पे चलना है। तो ये बहुत ही ऐसा ऐसा मुझे लगता है बहुत ही थोड़ा सा खुद के समझदारी के ऊपर निर्णय करता है कि आदमी किस तरीके से सोच रहा है, तभी वो सही तरीके से काम कर सकता है।
आपने बहुत सही कहा। और इससे मुझे ये भी एक बात जो ध्यान आती है वो ये कि हम साधना में ये जो एक बात हम सुनते हैं कि समाधि और प्रज्ञा एक पक्षी के दो पंखों के जैसे, और हमें दोनों पंख मजबूत करने हैं, ये बात तो हमने धारण कर लिया। हम ये वाली दूसरी भी जो एक बात कही जाती है कि प्रज्ञा और करुणा भी बर्ड्स के विंग्स के जैसे हैं, कंपैशन एंड विजडम। तो उस वाले एस्पेक्ट को भी अगर हम साथ लेके चले, और फिर जैसे अजान ने बार बार कहा कि ये जो कंपैशन है ये खुद के लिए भी है, और खुद पे यहाँ खुद से शायद यहाँ पे मतलब उस आत्म भाव से इतना ज्यादा ना होके, बट जस्ट अबाउट एनी अदर बीइंग। उन्होंने जैसा कहा कि टेक द होल सिचुएशन इनटू अकाउंट एंड दैट होल सिचुएशन इंक्लूड्स दिस बीइंग आल्सो, maybe not these words but something to that effect she said. So one could possibly move in a direction of selflessness by means of that also, कि इस पूरी घटना में क्या क्या उपस्थित है, including this one being also, and then having compassion or maitri or whatever is the the situation, उसके अकॉर्डिंग उस समय का जो भाव है वो सभी को साथ लेके चलने का. थैंक यू फॉर दैट पंकज जी.
हाँ, इसी में जैसे अभी आपने बोला ना सभी को साथ लेके चलने का, तो हम ये भूल जाते हैं कि हम सभी में हम भी आते हैं, ठीक है, और जो व्यक्ति अपने आप को ही लेके चलता है वो ये भूल जाता है कि दूसरे भी आते हैं. तो इसलिए सभी का मतलब होता है कि हम भी उसमें आ जाते हैं. तो जो अभी मैं वो स्वामी की घटना बता रहा था, उसमें बाद में कई सालों बाद उन्होंने जब अध्यात्म की प्रैक्टिस की, उसके बाद उनको रियलाइज हुआ कि दोनों ही गलत रास्ते पे जा रहे थे. जो दूसरा सबकी भलाई करने के रास्ते पे चल रहा था, उसको बाद में रियलाइज हुआ कि आखिर खुद के लिए भी कुछ सोचना है. तो मतलब जब अपने बारे में सोचा, जब बैलेंस हो गया, मतलब सभी को इंक्लूड कर लिया, तो वो भी बहुत तरीके से अच्छे से आगे बढ़ गए. और जो दूसरे थे, जो सिर्फ स्वयं के बारे में सोचते थे, वो दूसरों के बारे में सोचने लगे, तो वो भी काफी ज्यादा आगे बढ़ गए. तो मतलब सभी को इंक्लूड करना है, यहाँ तक कि अपने को भी और दूसरों को भी.
जी, थैंक यू. सो लेट्स हियर फ्रॉम अदर्स आल्सो. अब दीपक जी आप शेयर करना चाहते हैं? दीपक सूरी जी, आप म्यूट पे बोल रहे हैं सर.
एक तो ये जो वी जस्ट नाउ वी आर डिस्कसिंग, इसका जो मेन समरी है वो यही है कि जब हम किसी के लिए कंपैशन की फीलिंग रखते हैं तो अपने आप को ओवर टैक्स ना करें. इससे हद तक तो क्योंकि हमारी अपनी लिमिटेशन हैं इन ए नॉर्मल रूडिमेंट्री सेंस कि हम अपने आप को ओवर टैक्स ना करें. ठीक है, वी शुड थिंक गुड ऑफ अदर्स, बट वी मस्ट ऑल्सो कीप आवर ओन लिमिट्स in mind कि we cannot go beyond that. That's what I personally feel. लेकिन जो मेरा मेन टेक अवे रहा इस टॉक से वो ये एक, जब हम ब्रह्म विहार में जब हम विचरण करते हैं, साधना करते रहते हैं, तो ये भूल जाते हैं कि ये भी एक ट्रांजिटरी फेज है. इट इज़ ऑल्सो इम्परमानेंट. तो दिस वी शुड नॉट फॉरगेट कि ये अनंता है, इम्परमानेंट है और इसमें अनसेटिस्फैक्टरीनेस है. लेकिन ये एक नई डायमेंशन मुझे लगता है मेरी सोच में ऐड हुई है आज. दिस इज व्हाट आई वांट टू से.
Yeah, that's very true. क्योंकि जब हम ये ब्रह्म विहार की फीलिंग से ये इन भावों को एक्सपीरियंस करने लगते हैं तो फिर चाहते हैं कि अब यही बना रहे. पर ये भी कंडीशनड है, क्योंकि जब किसी जहाँ पे सफरिंग है वहां कंपैशन जागेगा, जहाँ पे खुशी है उस सिचुएशन में मुदिता जागेगी. हर ब्रह्म विहार भी हर समय नहीं प्रेजेंट होगा. और प्लस कई बार ऐसे समय आएंगे जब हमारे जो अनस्किलफुल मेंटल स्टेट्स है वो अराइज होंगी. तो तब हमें शायद फिर से एक बार अपने लिए कंपैशन इन्वोक करना होगा. थैंक्स फॉर दैट. Sasha, would you like to share something, your takeaway or thoughts?
Well, there's quite a few thoughts. I mean, what stuck to me is also that thing that Upekkha needs a maturity of the mind. And I think as long as we are not so mature, not fully developed, it is important to also, really take care of ourselves. And of course, I'm often thinking a lot about work and I mean, also like here in Germany, we have a very deficit-oriented way of looking at things. We don't see the good things as much as the bad things. And yeah, I mean, it's all a bit jumbled, but I think these things come together. And when Upekkha is not fully developed, and yet one is also not gentle enough to oneself or to others, I feel it's also very difficult actually to develop enough metta, so to say. So I feel Upekkha and metta somehow go together, and yeah, I'm sometimes wondering, whether the lack of Upekkha really also generates a lack of metta in general. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. I mean, that thing of knowing one's capacity is really important because, I mean, especially in the workplace, I feel one is often thrown into situations which are sometimes just too much. Or, of course, with, the COVID, I mean, one is also thrown into such situations depending on, what happens. And yeah, But of course, yeah, things regarding COVID, knowing one's capacity doesn't really help if outer circumstances are the way they are, depending on what one experiences. But yeah, certainly in the workplace, that is important.
Yeah, and just as you were saying this, it struck to me that upekha is upekha when it is informed by wisdom. So upekha would mean that I'm experiencing these difficult times right now because of some karma. It's a karma vipak. So that wisdom is there, and therefore one is able to kind of say that, yes, it's all right for this moment, and come back to acceptance of the way things are. At least that's the thought that came to my mind. Rajesh ji, would you like to add something to that? Rajesh ji, Anish ji.
Can I add?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah. Actually, what I see Brahma Viharas as basically आपकी साधना का testing actually. How you are implementing in your life. अगर आपकी साधना life में किस तरह से these are the tools to implement your sadhana into your life. So first you do it because you have body and mind as an experiment. So first you have to experiment on yourself. First is that, and you take, अगर आपके पास situation साधना करते वक्त बैठते हैं, जब हम साधना कर रहे होते और उस वक्त कुछ ऐसी situation आती है जब आप संभाल नहीं पा रहे, तो you give मैत्री to yourself. That's a tool given by Buddha, या कह लो हमारे को realize कराया कि this is one of the major tool. मैत्री ले लीजिए, फिर then you have karuna, compassion, because once how you deal with yourself. So karuna is also part of it, कि भाई आप करुणा अपने लिए भी रखेंगे तो obviously manifestation उसकी जो बाहर होगी वो ऑटोमेटिकली फिर आप दूसरे की मदद भी करेंगे. आपको उसको देख करके किसी बीमार व्यक्ति या किसी जो घायल व्यक्ति है उसको देख करके आपको करुणा आएगी. It's not and similarly mudita also. Mudita में भी मैं I find myself कि दूसरे की अगर कोई बाहर ऑफिस में अगर आपका किसी का प्रमोशन हो रहा है या कुछ अच्छा कर रहे हैं and you are able to balance yourself within view and give, you see yourself ki how you are reacting, and you be happy with whatever happened to her or him. So then you find yourself so calm and not with any agony, nothing, and you feel I think so that's the Brahma Vihar you feel at that moment. So, and of course to add on fourth one, upekha की बात करेंगे तो upekha is also one of the बिना मतलब आप equanimous हुए बगैर you can't think your wisdom. If your wisdom is there, then only you can have equanimity, or मतलब vice versa also. So whole thing is all four Brahma Viharas are for us. They are the tool for how we implement Dhamma in our actual life actually. So for me, I mean, that's how I try and implement those four Brahma Viharas. That's it.
Yeah, that's a very good way to look at it, that the more we are cultivating our practice, the more Brahma Viharas start to manifest in our day-to-day life.
Yeah. So I think, very well said. And, while you were saying that, it occurred to me that, how many of us are kind of exhibiting what these Brahma Viharas are after we kind of meditate. But when I look at these monks, right, they seem like they're living these Brahma Viharas. They laugh a lot. They laugh more than most of the meditators laugh. I think most meditators are very serious, but all these monks are joyous. When, for example, in this talk, even Ajahn Chandrashri was smiling all throughout, right? And we somehow make ourselves so serious while we meditate. When I hear Ajahn Sumedho, I have these beautiful moments that I'm smiling, half of the talk. He's smiling, he's expressing his joy. And so is true with His Holiness Dalai Lama. So I think what came to my mind when I was hearing that was that, these are the things that we kind of don't give enough importance. These should be the outcomes of our practice. And our people who have gone very deep into the practice are exhibiting that, and we need to really pay them the importance that they need. The whole of the practice should bring a lot of joy, a lot of well-being to us.
Yeah, we become a bunch of grumpy meditators.
Absolutely. At least I am.
No, same here, absolutely. Yeah.
I just wanted to share one thing. This interactive session has got out one very beautiful aspect in this whole, in the perspective, which is the way we put this balancing aspect. You see, you have to balance everything. For example, compassion and upeksha, it's a perfect balance required. That's a very important aspect in the whole story. The balancing aspect, very rightly put, I would say, out of this whole session. Diptiji, I will need to leave because Mahapanyoji is just calling me. So he gets his mobile just a little bit. So he was calling me. So I will give him the greetings from the entire group. And so if you will excuse me, if I will.
No problem at all. Thank you. Thank you. So let's hear from some of us who've not spoken so far. Apurji, would you like to go next and talk about any key takeaway you had from this talk or from the discussion?
The talk per se, I think दो चीजें मुझे बहुत अच्छी तरह स्ट्राइक करी. एक तो शिवानी जी ने भी बोला कि whenever I am asked to say something, I get really worked up because whatever I say has to be perfect. It has to tick all the boxes. It has to ensure that it's the most wise thing. And I suddenly realized after listening to this that even if I tick all the boxes, my answer will not be right. I think that's very helpful for me. And दूसरी बात जो मुझे बहुत अच्छी लगी टॉक के बारे में, वो मुदिता के बारे में थी. मुदिता को मैं बहुत ही एक बड़े चैलेंज की तरह से लेता था, क्योंकि मेरे अंदर जेलसी का एक ऑलमोस्ट हार्डवायर्ड रिएक्शन है. हर सिचुएशन में जेलसी arises first even before I realize it as a result. And मुदिता तो मुझे लगता था कि मेरे बस की नहीं है, तो उसको मैं आउट ऑफ सिलेबस ही मानता था, उसको मैंने छोड़ ही रखा था. एंड पहली बारी मैंने किसी से सुना है कि मुदिता को हम अपने ऊपर भी देख सकते हैं, फॉर वन सेल्फ ऑल्सो. तो एक दरवाजा जो मेरे लिए पूरा बंद था, वो एक तरह से खुल गया, if I can use that term. तो ये दो चीजें मुझे इस टॉक में काफी स्ट्राइक करी.
Yeah, thank you for sharing on such a personal level. Yeah, it seems like applying any one will address both the two, because of that, the whole idea about idealism and self-criticism, which applies to everybody actually in some or the other measure, and then not celebrating enough our own gifts. All right. और कौन है? निलय, आप कुछ कहना चाहेंगे?
So when Poonam ji was saying, so I was just thinking personally. So we generally tend to react. I mean, the emotions such as jealousy, they're more of a reaction, and this is more personal in the sense. So I was thinking, how often am I aware of these reactions? Because as Sir says, suffering needs to be understood or investigated, and most of the times, I mean, there are a lot of times I'm not even aware. So the investigation and the understanding part doesn't come. So maybe the sati part, the mindfulness, that needs to be strengthened so that I'm more often aware what's going on inside. And the anatta part, I think when they were saying the confusion often arises, what I understand is from, as Sir also said, we often call it, there is no self. So, and maybe it's a different way to say it would be the impersonal self, because the 5 aggregates do exist. So when we are saying there is no self, there is a being, and the anatta in that sense would be none of these 5 aggregates, I can call them myself or mine, or so. I mean, so in that sense, there is a being that is experiencing these, but since I can not call any of these myself, so but when I'm sending metta, or so it is, so there are beings who are experiencing these, and it is to them that I'm sending these. If all of us were already enlightened, that we did not have this, we do not attach to these aggregates, then the question would not arise, maybe.
Yeah, we are just a few lifetimes, few billions of lifetimes away from that.
One more thing I would like to add,
Yes,
Deepti, because we are talking about anatta also. So हम actually हम शायद anatta और self जब हम बात करते हैं तो this is we मतलब like self is there, and we have to, our journey is from self to non-self, and that journey needs to be full of compassion, full of, you know, all the Brahma Viharas we have to carry with ourselves. और कह लो कि अब जो जर्नी है उसको अच्छा बनाने के लिए या हैप्पी जर्नी बनाने के लिए we use this. So this, I mean, if we think that anatta और you know self, इसको करके हमारे को self से contradiction हो रहा है. To my understanding, it's like जब self होता है तब there is no mudita, there is no nothing, there is nothing which is there, you know, all Brahma Viharas just vanish, and when there is no self, then only it appears. So it's like क्योंकि आप अपने लिए आप you begin with yourself, but because you have experimentally, this is the only tool I have, the body and the mind. So I start with this, but when I start with this and just spread it, it's like it's beyond, you know, beyond you. It's always be beyond you, not beyond, मतलब आपके पास नहीं रहेगी वो. I mean, so anatta automatically, I think so. It's a journey. अभी तो हम छोटे-छोटे शायद छोटी-छोटी एक stance ले मतलब कहना चाहिए आपको थोड़ा period के लिए होता है where we feel that you are not there and it's beyond you. So then when time मतलब ये time period जैसे जैसे बढ़ता जाएगा तो obviously happiness and these are the manifestations, I think so, will appear. So I don't think so there is confusion of anatta and that's what there is self or non-self ki koi contradiction. I mean, I find there's no contradiction at all. Sorry, I just wanted to add this.
No problem.
I don't know whether you got it or not, but I just wanted to say, I hope so. I'm able to communicate, though
Yes,
words
yes,
are less.
yes, absolutely. And thanks for bringing that out. निखिल, आप कुछ कहना चाह रहे हैं इसके ऊपर?
हाँ, वो एक्चुअली वो छोटा सा पैराग्राफ मैं शेयर कर देता हूँ, मुझे अभी दिख गया है वो। तो वो पूनम जी की बात को ही शायद एक्सटेंड कर रहा है। उन्होंने जर्नी वर्ड यूज किया, उसमें भी कुछ ऐसा ही लिखा था, तो आप लोग प्लीज उसको देखें। यू नो, ये लविंग काइंडनेस के मैं पढ़ देता हूँ। Loving kindness can be cultivated in the heart with great benefit to ourselves. And then it starts. Someone once said quite rightly, that's an ego trip. It is. As long as we have an ego, every trip we are on is an ego trip. But at least this is one trip in the right direction. This journey goes towards the ultimate destination, egolessness, because the more loving kindness there is in the heart, the less ego. The more the ego diminishes, the more love can come from the heart. When other people are taken into the heart, the self has to step aside to make room. Others are benefiting by that as a matter of course, but that is a secondary consideration. The only person we can lead to liberation is ourselves. Everybody has to go alone, solitarily. Anybody who would like to come along is welcome. The bandwagon is big and there aren't enough people on it yet. सो ये पैराग्राफ मैं पहले नहीं उतना समझ पाया जब मैंने पढ़ा था मॉर्निंग सेशंस में, बट इस क्वेश्चन के बाद और अभी आप लोगों के डिस्कशन में ये थोड़ा क्लैरिटी बढ़ी है मेरी. सो दैट वाज द पैराग्राफ आई वांटेड टू bring it out for you people.
Yeah, sure. That was a very good summary of some of the thoughts and ideas that we were discussing here. We are almost at the top of the hour, so especially from some of us, who've not spoken, agar koi kuch kehna chahe before we call it a day, then you're most welcome. Surendra ji, Lalit, Shant ji, Indu ji, Kurian, if any of you would like to add to what we are discussing today, that's about Brahma Viharas, Ajahn Chandrasiri's talk on Brahma Viharas. And I guess Deepak ji also, Deepak Tyagi ji. Okay, looks like everybody chooses to stay quiet. So I guess we can wrap it up with that. Rajesh, would you like to summarize in any way?
No, I think I feel that Ajahn Chandrashri is actually an embodiment of the Brahma Viharas, and he rightly called her to give this talk. And as Anish ji mentioned, she really helped us not only just understand what these Brahma Viharas are, but apply them on ourselves. I think that is a huge takeaway that she kind of directed us towards thinking of how can we not just look at Brahma Viharas for the rest of the people around us, but on ourselves. And also in this discussion especially, I think the balancing of the Brahma Viharas also came in pretty nicely, and taking them in a middle way is very important.
Yeah, true. So thanks for that. Maybe we just do the chanting of Brahma Viharas that she called out. When I'm just opening the chanting book, and maybe we'll share screen. So I will share it in Hindi. This is the one where we say that I abide with so and so Brahma Vihara in the fourth quarter, first quarter, second quarter, etc. of the heart. She's called that out in the talk. Shivani ji, would you like to do the chant if you're still there with us? चलो मैं ही ट्राई कर लेती हूँ. ओके. मेत्ता सहगतेन चेतसा एकं दिशं हरित्वा विहरति तथा द्वितीयं तथा तृतीयं तथा चतुर्थम् इति युद्धमतो तिर्यं सब्पत्ताय सब्भावन्तं लोकम् मेत्ता सहगतेन चेतसा विपुलेन महगतेन अपमानेन अवेरेण अव्यापज्येन परित्वा विहरति करुणा सहगतेन चेतसा एकं दिशं परित्वा विहरति तथा द्वितीयं तथा तृतीयं तथा चतुर्थम् इति युद्धमधोतिर्यं सब्पत्ताय सब्भावन्तं लोकम् करुणा सहगतेन चेतसा विपुलेन महगतेन अपमानेन अवेरेण अव्यापज्येन परित्वा विहरति मुदिता सहगतेन चेतसा एकं दिशं परित्वा विहरति तथा द्वितीयं तथा तृतीयं तथा चतुर्थम् इति युद्धमधोतिर्यं सब्पत्ताय सब्भावन्तं लोकम् मुदिता सहगतेन चेतसा विपुलेन महगतेन अपमानेन अवेरेण अव्यापज्येन परित्वा विहरति उपेक्षा सहगतेन चेतसा एकं दिशं परित्वा विहरति तथा द्वितीयं तथा तृतीयं तथा चतुर्थम् इति युद्धमधोतिर्यं सब्पत्ताय सब्भावन्तं लोकम् उपेक्षा सहगतेन चेतसा विपुलेन महगतेन अपमानेन अवेरेण अव्यापज्येन परित्वा विहरति अरहं सम्मा सम्बुद्धो भगवा बुद्धं भगवन्तं अभिवादेमि स्वाखतो भगवता धम्मं नमस्सामि सुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संघो संघं नमामि. Thank you everyone. Thank you for your wonderful inputs.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you, Deepti ji, for hosting such a beautiful session. Thank you.
you.